She was the most powerful woman in the world. Her face was stamped onto coins. Statues were raised in her honor across the Roman Empire. And every night, under a false name, she would sneak out to the filthiest district in Rome to work in a brothel. But that's not the craziest part. The craziest part is, she did it for sport. The year is 41 AD. The emperor of Rome is Claudius, a middle-aged man who walked with a limp, had a stutter, and was seen by many as a fool who simply stumbled into power. At his side is his third wife, Empress Valeria Messalina. She is his grandniece, decades younger, and universally described as one of the most beautiful women in the empire. She had everything: power, wealth, divine status. Her future and the future of her children was secure. And yet history tells us she risked absolutely everything, night after night, for something she could already have for free. This forces us to ask the central question: why would an empress pose as a prostitute? We need to understand the stakes. In Rome, a woman's virtue, especially that of the imperial family, was a pillar of the state. The empress was the mother of Rome. Her purity was a symbol of the purity of the empire itself. Any misstep wasn't just a personal scandal, it was treason. Adultery for an empress could be punished by death, as it tainted the imperial bloodline and humiliated the emperor. Messalina's actions, if true, weren't just reckless, they were a deadly game against the most powerful man on earth, her own husband. And she wasn't playing in the shadows. She was turning the palace itself into her personal playground. The answer to why she did it begins with the most infamous story about her. According to the Roman historians Pliny the Elder and Tacitus, Messalina wasn't just satisfying a craving, she was competing. She laid down a challenge to Scylla, Rome's most famous and sought-after prostitute. The wager: who could service more men in 24 hours. The competition lasted all night and into the dawn. Scylla, the professional, gave up from exhaustion. Messalina, the empress of Rome, kept going and, according to the accounts, won the contest with a score of 25 partners. The answer to why seems to be, initially, an addiction to adrenaline and power. But this unleashed something no one expected, which leads us to ask, how could she do all of this repeatedly without the Emperor Claudius ever finding out? The answer is that Emperor Claudius was notoriously oblivious. He was more concerned with his history books and the administration of the empire, and he blindly trusted his advisors, many of whom were former slaves, and his young wife. Messalina exploited this blindness relentlessly. She turned her lust into a political weapon. She wasn't just sleeping with anonymous men in brothels. She began summoning the most powerful senators and nobles of Rome to her chambers. If they refused, she used her influence over Claudius to accuse them of treason and have them executed, seizing their wealth. If they accepted, they became her hostages, accomplices to her crimes. She built a circle of power and fear based on sex and blackmail. She wasn't just having fun, she was creating a shadow government inside the palace walls. Now, the question changes. If she already controlled the most powerful men in Rome, what was her endgame? What more could she possibly want? The endgame became clear in the year 48 AD. Messalina fell in love, or at least became obsessed, with Gaius Silius, described as the handsomest man in Rome. She forced him to divorce his wife and made him her exclusive lover. This was already dangerous, but then she decided to do the unthinkable. While Claudius was away from Rome on an official trip to the port of Ostia, Messalina staged a wedding ceremony. In public, with witnesses, she married Gaius Silius. This appeared to be the peak of her power, the final move. She was no longer hiding, she was publicly repudiating the emperor. It looked like a clear coup attempt.
marry her new chosen one, and assassinate Claudius when he returned. But why do something so openly suicidal? With everything on the line, what was the miscalculation that sealed her fate forever? The miscalculation was underestimating the very men she had helped put into power. One of Claudius's most influential advisors, the freedman Narcissus, realized that the union of Messalina and Silius would leave him powerless, or more likely, dead. He had to act first. Narcissus raced to Ostia and revealed everything to the emperor. He didn't frame it as an affair. He framed it as an imminent coup d'etat, about to happen at any moment. For the first time, the fog of ignorance lifted from Claudius's eyes. Stricken with panic and betrayal, he gave Narcissus full control of the Praetorian Guard with a single order: solve the problem. The party turned into a massacre. Silius and all other accomplices were executed on the spot. Messalina was arrested and taken to the gardens of Lucullus, where she awaited her sentence. She finally understood the gravity of her actions and begged for a chance to see her husband, but Narcissus made sure that would never happen. The order came swiftly. She was executed right there, without a trial. Claudius ordered Messalina's name to be removed from all monuments and records, an act known as damnatio memoriae, the damnation of memory, an attempt to erase her from history. But ironically, this only made her legend more powerful.